Hello, and welcome to the HHH podcast, the podcast where we talk about those horrible humans in history. I am your host, Angela Pearson, and just so you know, guys, this episode, I know what you're expecting. I know you're expecting to be hearing about Tiberius, the horrible emperor of Rome, but this week I am actually visiting him, and well, not him specifically, where he was. And where he ruled and reigned. So I am actually not available to do all the research that I need for him. So today's episode is just going to be a quick mini episode to tell you a quick story about something else. It's not going to be a horrible human, and it's going to be short and sweet because, like I said, I'm out of the office. So it's going to be a quick, short, sweet, but crazy story. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the Dyatlov Pass incident, but we are going to talk about that story really quick today, and I hope you enjoy it because it's pretty spooky and pretty scary. And next week will also be a mini episode with another great story, so make sure you listen to that. But then I will be back the following week with the episode about the infamous Tiberius. So hold on to your hats, guys. We're going to talk about the Dyatlov Pass incident today. Dyatlov Pass is a place in Russia that people can go hiking in. It's not recommended. So this event happened either February 1st or February 2nd of 1959 when 9 Soviet hikers entered the Ural Mountains, and they were just a bunch of college students out for this trek who wanted to go on this hike. There's a bunch of men and women together, and they hiked into these mountains that were known as the Death Mountains. Now, I don't know if you know much about the Soviet Union or Russia or the terrain out there, but it is horrendous. It is awful. It gets sub-zero temperatures, and this is what they were experiencing during their hike. Now, here's the mystery. The 9 hikers vanished. They went with a university group, and so when their parents didn't hear from them, the parents started calling and asking for someone to investigate. So they sent out a bunch of people to investigate what had happened to these individuals. And they found something super curious. They found the campsite where these kids had been staying, and they found their tent. But curiously, the tent had been cut from the inside, like ripped open from the inside. And they found 2 bodies who were just wearing underwear, frozen to death. Then they also found over by the tree line a few more bodies who had bumps and scrapes and bruises, and someone had climbed a tree and they were wearing the clothes of the people who had passed away just a few yards away. There was a lot of weird things about this. So some of the bodies that were discovered, most of them, well, actually all of them died of hypothermia. Some of them had some physical trauma that the coroner related to like a traffic accident or a car accident. Some had small cracks in their skull. 4 bodies were actually found lying in running water in a creek and buried under tons and tons of snow. And they had damage to the soft tissue, like their face. And some of them had missing eyes. One had a missing tongue. And one had missing eyebrows. Some had burns on them. But the only footprints that were in the snow were the footprints from this group of people. And they were leading out of the tent, but they weren't like running footsteps. They were just walking footsteps. A couple of them found alcohol in their system. But for the most part, no one knew how they actually died. It was super random. And to make things even more confusing, on some of the clothing, they found radioactive signatures, like, radioactive bombs and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of theories floating around about what happened to these hikers because they mysteriously died. And there is no proof that anyone else was there. They all just died, and they all died in random ways. And I even forgot to mention one of them was found with a chunk of flesh from his own hand in his mouth. Like, super random, super crazy ways that these people died. And maybe in a different episode, I'll get into a lot more detail about this, but it was super creepy. And they still have yet to solve what actually happened up at this campsite. Some of the theories are, some people think that aliens came down and did things to them. Some people believe it was a Yeti that came and attacked them, except there was no Yeti footprints, but whatever, maybe he covered his tracks. Some believe that the Russians, who at the time were the Soviet Union, were testing weapons and they just happened to get caught in the crosshairs because some of them, they had significant force injuries, like they had been hit by something, but not all of them. And some of them had burn marks, some of them didn't. So that's one of the theories. Another theory is that they had built up their tent and some snow in the middle of the night had fallen down on their tent, and they assumed that meant an avalanche was coming. So they hurried and, ripped out of their tent. I don't know why they didn't just use the door, but they ripped out of the tent and then ran down the hill to try and get away. And when two of them died, because the temperatures, I tell you what, they were so cold. It's not surprising that people would die instantaneously from the temperatures out there. But anyways, so they think that two of them died, and so the rest of them took their clothes to try and stay warm. And the ones by the tree line had tried to start a fire, and they're thinking some of the burn marks were because they were starting to freeze to death and passed out and fell into the fire. But a lot of the injuries that these individuals sustained were before they died. So, and the missing tongue and the missing eyes, no one has an explanation for that. So anyways, I wanted to tell you this creepy story just so you had a little bit of something fun during your week. But maybe later I will go into more detail about the Dyatlov Pass incident. If you want to hear more details about this, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to go into more detail about this because it is a really spooky story, especially since it happened on Death Mountain, right? So anyways, I will see you guys next week on our next mini episode of Horrible Humans in History. See you soon.